DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Against the Boards. Chamberlain Bauder here with you. Thanks to my producer Paul Russo for getting us going. We got an awesome episode for you today as we continue to highlight lacrosse in the Rochester area and bring our solidarity to the Rochester Knighthawks, of course, in this tough and questionable time as they still search for a new owner after Terry Pegula left them high and dry at the beginning of this summer. Now, before we get into anything else later on today, we will have an interview with Thomas Gravino, Victor 4-star recruit that went to Maryland and has been a short stick defensive midfielder for the team there. Also an under-20s Team USA short stick defensive midfielder. So definitely one of the premier young players when it comes to the entire world of lacrosse, really, but from the Rochester area, was able to get him on for 20 minutes and have a chat with him. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, let's talk about the word salad that found its way to Twitter and X, whatever you want to call it. I'm still calling it Twitter. The other day, from Adam Levy, who I love Adam. Thank God that Adam continues to tweet things all the time. I've talked to him plenty of times just about, his philosophies on lacrosse. I really appreciate the way that he looks at the sport. I don't love this tweet from him, though. I won't lie. The effort to keep the Rochester Knighthawks organization around and hopefully in Rochester is an ongoing situation. I have heard from a couple of sources that there is still at least one new owner who might work out. This situation is developing and is changing day by day. So, that was a whole lot of nothing to me at the end of the day. Obviously, having sources confirming whether or not there are people around is good, and it's nice to have that. But really, they're just confirming that we don't know. Like, that's all that we get for confirmation right now. At the end of the day, though, this kind of conversation that I'm even having right now about it, and Adam tweeting about it, Dan Arestia retweeting those things, all of us being active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, posting wherever we can, signs up on Blue Cross Arena, maybe? Who knows? That would be an interesting idea. But it's the voice of the fans that is going to help the most for the NLL to realize that a team wants to stay in Rochester and that they should 100% be devoted to getting that to occur. And I just hope that they are getting creative enough with where to go for possible owners. If anybody else is kind of looking through Twitter and different things, I guess the only thing I can really say to you for anyone that's getting their hopes up as they look through and dig through all of these things, when people say things about a money situation, about possible owners that are intrigued, check the profile. See what else they've put out. See if it even... the amount of times that somebody came in and tried to say a number that the Knighthawks were being sold at or a certain owner that could come in. It was like the first tweet ever about lacrosse that they had made, or it was just in this slew of a bunch of crap that they had posted. So I would just say anytime you see something that you want to believe on Twitter right now, check the profile and see if they're a troll, because at this point in our Twitter world, it seems like 70% of what we're seeing is never actually what we want. It's mostly just rage bait or making you agree with the thoughts you already have bait. So yeah, check who those things are coming from as you go. Couple more housekeeping things. In the beginning of August, it will be the National Collegiate Box Lacrosse Series. That is the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League and all of the other collegiate box leagues around the United States, San Diego, Denver, all over, really. In most of the NLL hotbeds, really, there is a set of 3 to 4 teams that are coached by NLL players. They each have their own season over the month of July, and the best team from each city then goes to the National Collegiate Box Series. Last year, Rochester's Hawkeyes won the whole thing under their head coach, Dan Coates. Thomas Gravino, who we'll talk to momentarily, was on that team, scored a slew of goals. He basically averaged 3 goals a game and almost 6 points during his entire season of box, which is pretty awesome for a short stick defensive midfielder in college to be doing that when he's getting in his first real time in the box. But that Hawkeyes team going to be looking to try to field the team for the National Collegiate Box Series. But the other thing that's awesome for Knighthawks fans and Rochester lacrosse fans is Rochester got the series this year. It will be at RIT for all of those games. So a couple things. One, as long as those games are open to the public, as many people from Rochester need to show out to that event as possible so that they can see from a league perspective that Rochester loves their lacrosse and wants to watch it still thrive. The other thing, too, I will be broadcasting those games. So if you're not able to tune in or to go in person, they will be on hopefully NLL Plus, but they will also be on YouTube for the NCBS tournament, and I believe also live on the Instagram as that goes. But that series will be in the first week of August, and as I pull up my calendar so that I have the actual dates, the 6th, it's a Wednesday, through the 9th of that Saturday. So the first full week of August is the National Collegiate Box Series. All right. That does it for our housekeeping. After the interview with Thomas Gravino, we will talk a bit about the PLL as we get into Native American Heritage Weekend next weekend. But without further ado, here's the man who is in the national championship at Gillette Stadium this year, Maryland Terp, Thomas Gravino. All right, I'm here with Thomas Gravino, current short stick defensive midfielder for the Maryland Terrapins. Previously a 4-star recruit out of Victor High School, plays for the Hawkeyes last summer in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League as one of the premier righties on the squad. Got to be coached by Dan Coates, Rylan Reese, Thomas McConvey throughout that season. And then, of course, this year got to go to the national championship as a consistent player for Maryland Terrapins, which is just kind of a crazy thing to say for really any lacrosse player. I feel like when you're going into your second year of college. So I guess before we get into anything, just kind of talk to me about last season and what that was like as an experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That last season was definitely a fun year. We had a lot of key guys that they're leaving, like our goalie McNaney, a couple of our defenders, and then some guys on offensive end. So that's gonna be a bummer for them, with the team coming back. But I think we'll be strong again in 26. But this year was a year, man. I think we started off eight or nine wins in a row. We started off hot, which was different from my freshman year in 23, where we lost a couple early. But I think that it was the same core group of guys the last 2 years in 24 and 25. So I think that just that team had been through a lot. We've lost, but we've come from behind and win. And just that team had been through a lot, like together, and we lost in 24 against to Notre Dame in the national championship as well. So I think that was a special team because the guys had been through every situation together. So we were a really close, tight knit group. Didn't end the way we wanted it to, but that was definitely a really strong team.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that weekend, like playing on championship weekend, and given you go to Maryland, you kind of expect to be there. That's kind of part of the recruiting profile for the team almost at this point. But just like, I mean, what was it like being at Gillette specifically for that weekend, knowing the upstate New York history that exists with the Gillette Stadium National Championship?
Yeah, it was definitely surreal. I think I had a picture. My dad sent me a picture of, I don't remember what year it was, but it was a picture of me wearing a Maryland 1 jersey, probably around 10 years ago. I think in the same stadium. So it was definitely pretty cool to go back there as being a player. And then it doesn't really kick in until, you're signing autographs for the kids and whatnot. And you see a little kid and you're like, damn, that was me 10 years ago. Now I'm doing that on the opposite side. So it's definitely super cool experience. And the way that, the NCAA and everyone, they set it up super nicely. So, you get a day in between, you get a practice day before and then a practice day Sunday in between the two games. So it's super cool. You get to get used to the turf, the grass, like whatever. I think it was like a blend of turf and grass. It was super nice quality. The whole event is super cool. That weekend's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I won't be surprised if you go back a couple times, at this point. Jeez Louise. So let's go back. You talked about 10 years ago being in a Maryland jersey. Just, I mean, what was your first interaction with lacrosse? And I guess what was the thing that made you fall in love with the sport?
Oof, it's a good one. I'll go with my first interaction with lacrosse first. So I think I was in second grade probably, and there was a thing called Rail League, and it was just a bunch of Victor teams. All the kids split up into different, it was probably 5, 6 teams, first and second graders. And my dad was the coach of my team. And a couple of my best buddies nowadays were on some of those teams with me. And I was kind of just playing on, the grass fields at the Victor schools. And that's probably when my first interaction with lacrosse, just, running around the grass, socks up to your knees, just goofing off. You have no idea what you're doing. You're just out there having fun. And that's probably what made me fall in love with it, just because it's just so easy to have fun playing lacrosse. You know, soccer, I also played that, and I also love soccer. But you're running the whole time. You're trying to half the time you're either running away from somebody or running towards somebody, and you're trying to catch your breath the whole time. Lacrosse is just it's you can stick tricks, goofing off, and everything. It's just so easy to have fun with the sport. So that's probably what made me fall in love with the sport.
Sweet. I love that. What made you choose Maryland? Was that like something from that you wanted to do for a long time, growing up watching how good they were? And I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So going back to when I was playing younger in the Victor leagues, one of the coaches that coached my travel team all the way up to I think sixth or seventh grade, Sean Marshall. He was one of his son was also in my grade packs. He plays at Georgetown now, and he played at Maryland. So we were always and he was coaching the travel team. So every time that we were at a tournament somewhere and there's Maryland near us, we'd go to those games. Or the Final Four weekends, there's always those youth tournaments somewhere in the area, so we'd go to see those games, and Maryland was always in it. So I just kind of rooted for them just because he was there, and Paxton was my buddy, so I was rooting for them because of that as well. So I think I just kind of was a fan of them growing up, and then I think when the time came, it was definitely the right fit for me. The coaches are amazing. The culture is exactly what you'd want. It's all about the guy next to you, and it's all about making it and being the best. The motto is be the best. Being the best person or student or athlete, and I fell in love with that as well. And the culture of winning there it's unreal. That's it's not only what's expected, but every guy is pushing the guy next to him. To be the best that they can be.
Yeah. Do you feel a lot of like similarities in like the way that that culture is in the ways that like upstate New York lacrosse, like the built programs in upstate New York have their cultures? I mean, like Till's being a Corning guy and, recruiting, he likes to recruit from upstate New York. And just like, do you feel like that's a consistent theme in Maryland?
Yeah, I definitely see the correlations. And Tillman, Coach Tills talks all the time about the upstate grit and the blue collar guys from not from the prep schools or what and whatever down in Maryland and all that. But he definitely talks about like you see somebody get a tough ground ball, he's like, oh yeah, God's country, that's upstate, baby. So it's just funny things like that. But I definitely see like the correlation with the public school guys from upstate, being super gritty and having to, fight tooth and nail for every ground ball and aspects on and off the field. But I definitely see the culture down at school is definitely similar to that. Every one of the guys is as gritty as they can come, as well as having the skills that go with, playing at Maryland. So it's kind of, you get the best of both worlds. You get the guys who are phenomenal athletes, great lacrosse players, and then they're also, pushing pushing to be their best in whatever they're doing. Whether it's studying, helping you study for a test or in a class with them, or just making you run a lower bowl with him on a weekend. So it's definitely that grittiness part.
Yeah, I feel like the thing with upstate New York teams is you could almost say every guy on the team could be a captain. Would you say that's kind of the same thing with Maryland?
Oh, for sure. At least with the older guys, I'd say, once you get junior and senior and even fifth, sixth years, I think all those guys, um, in my experience, every one of them has the leadership qualities. They may not, have the C on their jersey and everything. But every one of those guys, everyone's a leader, and they're learning from, the older guys. Like my freshman year, I had Luke Weirman, Logan McNaney, who I'd had for 2 years, but Ajax Abtel, some of those guys that were phenomenal leaders. And, I think that, they probably had someone when they were freshmen, someone who was a fourth or fifth year when they were younger. So, I think everyone just learns from the guy 2, 3 years older than him and teaches the guy 2, 3 years younger than him. So I think every single one of those guys on a team like Maryland can be a leader and has those capabilities because they're just learning from the best guys at their jobs.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean that's like, and so you lead me right to my next question. So you shift from O midi to short stick D midi, but you have a coach in like Jesse Bernhardt is your DC. Like that just seems like a cheat code to have. I mean, the entire coaching staff of Maryland, it feels like should just all be probably head coaches somewhere and could be, right? But so just, I mean, what is it like? One, what was that shift like? Because obviously when you go and you play your U20s for Team USA and things like that, you're not, you made that shift there too, also to short
Yep.
stick. So,
Yeah.
so that was a change that kind of happened there. Just, I mean, talk through that switch over to that position and I guess how it works out for you still.
So it was definitely difficult at first. So the first tryout, I think it was summer of 24 in June. That was the first tryout for the USA squad. I think it was Coach Gilardi from Stony Brook came up to me. He was like, "Hey, you took wings in high school, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, we had a Cornell Fogo, so I didn't really have to go back on D a whole lot." And he was like, "Awesome, go out there and go wing and try out some D mid." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, all right." We lose a face-off, whatever, and I go down and play defense. And then he was like, "Yeah, stick with it. You're doing well." So I ended up doing well at that tryout. Get invited back. I think that was round of 77, some number like that. And then it cuts down to 44, and I made that as playing D mid. So I was kind of like, all right, yeah, I'll accept that. Like, I'll buy in. I'll make this my thing. So I get to school in the fall, first practice. Jesse Bernhardt's like, "Gravino with the D." So I was like, "Oh shoot, man, it's happening." So the transition at school was definitely super tough because that's where I learned, the right techniques and stuff. Because from the second tryout for USA was in August, and so I still hadn't gotten to school by that point. So I was just kind of standing guys up sideways and making them run down the alley. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just running with them. And then at school and that whole fall it was definitely an adjustment, learning the techniques. That's the right way to backpedal. Being on your toes, not backpedaling too much, not giving him too much room, but also not being up in his hands so he can get around you. There's just so many different things that I learned. And it was definitely super helpful because we had a transfer from Bowdoin, Zach Gorno, who's a 6 year. And he was a 2-time D3 D midfielder of the year at Bowdoin. And came in and he didn't really know any of the techniques either. So we were kind of at the same spot, very similar athletic wise. So, he's just a little bit older, has that wisdom. So we were always the two of us, me and Zach Gorno, going out and giving each other like dodging reps and stuff. So it's super helpful to have kind of that almost a brother that you could, learn this new position with because it was very new to him as well. So I'd say that was super helpful in learning like the different techniques and all that. But the transition was hard. I've been yelled at a bunch, by the other D guys and the coach, but it was definitely worth it to take the time to learn it and practice it a whole year before I was able to get into a game with it playing D mid,
Right.
and then going on to the Jesse. It's funny, like all like the trolling Instagrams on Phil Cross, and even some like more the legit ones. They'll say Jesse Masterclass or something, and that's totally real. Like, it's phenomenal being coached by him. He'll just be like, all right, you know what, watch this rep, what you did. Try this, and you'll try it, and it'll work like that. I think that just comes with. I think he played a lot of football growing up as well. So he talks a lot about, playing defensive back and how it's very similar to D mid or LSM or pole. And that it is super helpful learning that as well. But it is phenomenal. He's got the knowledge, he's got the experience, and he's still playing, so he understands. It's like that player coach role. He still understands, like, you make a mistake, but it's you made that decision, and he understands through the mind of a player. Like, okay, I see what you're thinking here, and then he's able to work you through it and talk you through it. But it's phenomenal. It's definitely a reason why I progressed at the position this past year.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's sweet. My last area of questions for you, as I sit here with my Rochester flag over my shoulder in solidarity so that somebody can come by this team. Just what has professional lacrosse in Rochester done for your journey through the sport?
That's a good one. So I'll go back to third grade. I was on the travel squad I was on. I think I was third string midfield. I was playing. It was fun. I wasn't really that great. And then I think summer going into fourth grade or around there, started training with Joe Walters, wuu lived up here because he's from around Decoy. And then I think he was still with the Knighthawks at the time, so he was living in Rochester. Started training with him and came back in fourth grade in the spring, and I think I started right side attack. So I'd say that I'm super grateful that he was still with the Nighthawks because that's definitely a big reason to why I am the player I am today. Um, and besides that, just going to the Nighthawks, they put on a bunch of clinics over in Dryer Road, in Victor, in the box there, as well as going to Rochester Rattlers games back in the day. That was pretty awesome. And then I think just knowing, like, there's guys from my area who obviously way older than me, but playing at NLL, PLL, or MLL back in the day, and then also in colleges that were big names. I think that just the relationship, being from the same area, just kind of grows your love for the games. Thinking, oh, okay, he's from the same area as me. I can be him, 10, 15 years down the line. Like, I'm going to keep at this sport because it's fun to play. And I think it's possible for me to, achieve some of the things that these guys I see well over achieving. So I'd say it's definitely awesome. Like, having, unfortunately, it's we're down to just the Nighthawks in this area, but um, it's really awesome just having these professional teams. Not just for the guys younger, but I look up and I see the Nighthawks games, and I've you know been coached by Dan Coates and Colin Sharkey, who I don't think he's quite made the roster yet, but he's still in there. It's just so cool. Like, it almost makes it like seem a little more possible for like a college player, and then down to the younger guys. They see me, I see up to the pros, and it's just like it's super cool to see, like, these guys are just like me. Like, why can't I go play at that level?
Yeah.
But definitely super super bummed that there's a possibility we might have to close down the Hawks, but hopefully somebody comes and buys it. That would be definitely ideal.
Yeah, hopefully, you can convince a bunch of those Victor parents to pitch in some money or something.
Yeah.
But no, no, my last kind of thing to ask you about. So obviously the UCBLL you played in last year. Can you just talk a little bit about how most college guys like yourself see that experience as being useful, and where, for someone like you, the possibility of using that to go to juniors maybe in Canada in the summer if you're ever not after U20s kind of situation, or is it this is an introduction to box so that I can get drafted in the NLL? Just kind of what did you see that experience as for yourself last year?
So as far as myself, I saw it as like, at first I was like, all right, I'm gonna stay in shape over the summer and hopefully get my stick ready for the fall and the USA tryouts and all of that. And then I kind of just fell in love with the box game more and more. I'd played box before, but like when I was a little bit younger, I didn't really understand the physical part of it. Just kind of went straight to the goal. No finesse or anything, just kind of run by guys. And then this summer or past summer, learning from Coty, from Reese, and from McConvey, I think it just kind of made the game a lot more understandable because like looking at it without playing it, you're just like, all right, it's like hockey, whatever. But now, like you actually, once you understand how it's played and you understand the different offenses you can run, and the transition is just super fun in that game because it's what is it, 30, 40 yards, you got to beat guys instead of a 100-yard sprint. I definitely like that part more. But I'd say for me, like as the summer progressed, I was like, oh shoot, like this is something like I could potentially see myself playing NLL in a couple of years. I really enjoyed playing with the UCBLL and then in the nationals with NCBS. Yeah, that was a super fun experience because looking at the broadcasters, one of them was a Maryland guy, John Donville, and I was like, oh shoot, like tell him to hit tills up, tell him I'm doing well. Um, but so that was just super cool to see that and the experience and how much like kind of publicity it got. I don't think it's definitely a bad idea for anyone who's a college kid in this area to try and just see if they like playing box. It's definitely not for everybody, but there's definitely guys I know that would fall in love with it and could be super successful at it at going up through the levels. And then as far as this summer, I was planning potentially trying to go for junior A this summer, but it wasn't feasible with the Zalmith the Minto with the one with the USA squad. So I think I still have one more year. So next summer, definitely looking to play junior A. And then I think after that, I think I have 2 years to play with 1 or 2 summers left after my junior year, to play with Hawkeyes and Coatsy after I run out of junior A eligibility. So definitely, hopefully, we can keep that dream alive.
Big thanks to Thomas Gravino for coming on to the podcast yesterday for that interview. Awesome just to talk to guys from around this area and get an idea of, one, how they see lacrosse and how they got into the sport and so involved in the sport. I always feel like I find some of the best athletes from around upstate New York wind up not actually getting into the sport until they're in second or third grade. That's the case here with T-Graph. But so as we kind of transition here from our Rochester focus, we obviously keep our upstate New York focus with everything that we do on this show. But pivoting the conversation a little bit to the PLL and the field professional game, just to wrap up as we get into this next week. Obviously, last weekend was the throwback weekend. Upon seeing the jerseys, the best jersey of the weekend was Denver. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was Denver. But I think the reason that I placed it so low still rings true. That should just be their jersey. Like next year, when they put the Denver Outlaws jerseys together, they should just take the throwback jerseys and say, here you go. Like, that's it. They're perfect. They're literally perfect for the Denver Outlaws. No notes. Like, just wear them all the time. That's my only note, actually. But it's such an aggressive note that I actually moved them down my ranking list when I saw them. Also awesome to hear Jack Rowlett yesterday on the Mitchell Pelkey Lacrosse Show talking about those Carolina Chaos jerseys, saying those were probably the cleanest ones they've ever had. I would 100% agree with that take. And then also, just like overall, the Atlas's jerseys on field did not look as bad as I thought that they would. I'm still just disappointed that we don't have anything new for the Archers. But no, my big takeaway from that was that the Denver Outlaws jerseys were absolutely gorgeous, and they should just wear those all the time. Now, of course, this weekend, it's Native American Heritage Week, so it will be, again, all 8 teams in the PLL playing in specialty jerseys. We're not ranking them, though, because I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of disappointed in the PLL. Like, I get that you have these logos and that they are, I mean, no question, the logos that got made last year were all very, very awesome and make sense for the teams to keep those logos. However, the only change to the jerseys should not be whether they're the home or away team and switching them from a team color to a white jersey or from a white jersey to a team color. And that is literally all that has happened with the PLL heritage jerseys for this season. And so because of that, we're just not really going to talk about them that much. And we're just going to talk about the games and where some upstate New Yorkers are thriving right now as we look through the official stats of the PLL. Taking a look at the leaderboards right now, just for some quick notes for those interested. I was just telling Paul before we got back after the interview, four of the top five goalies in the PLL, four of the top four actually, the top four goalies in the PLL, all have a connection to upstate New York. Logan McNaney right now is playing absolutely out of his mind. Of course, the Corning native. We all know Blaze Reardon is still on the throne of the best goalie in the world. He's from Fairport. Brett Dobson playing a little bit hurt right now, but still the fourth best save percentage in the league. Of course, went to St. Bonaventure. And then Liam Entenmann with a literally 1/10 of a save percentage lower than Brett Dobson is the goalie for the New York Atlas. And the only reason that he's at fifth is because Austin Kaut came in for minimal minutes and is actually the second best save percentage in the league right now at 62%. But so when we look through, there's 8 goalies that play in the PLL. 4 of them are either natives of or played college in upstate New York. And then arguably the guy who in 5 years very well could be the best goalie in the entire league plays for New York and is from downstate. So, I mean, it's just, I think the goalie room, it makes total sense. That's the other thing, too. I, as a fan of upstate New York lacrosse, will always stand by the fact that we are an area that prides ourselves on our specialists, goalies and face-off specialists. We pump them out like no other, which is also why I partially hate sixes. Not hate sixes. I don't love the idea of it because it fights against the upstate New York players that are often trying to get into that type of area. But of course, the Erlin brothers, Chase Erlin playing right now still for the Redwoods in goal, TD playing at the faceoff dot for the Redwoods right now. Team's not necessarily doing it so hot at the moment, but ultimately to know that there's that many guys from the upstate New York area that are deeply leading the league in different stat lines is really awesome. The last one to note, shooting percentage is something that Knighthawks fans will be very familiar with as a stat that a Knighthawk often leads in the PLL. 2 years ago, I believe, it was Ryan Smith that led the PLL in shooting percentage. And when he did it, he had like a 78% shooting percentage. It was absolutely disgusting. Thomas McConvey is 5th in the PLL right now in shooting percentage at 44%. He's one of technically 4 midfielders on that list if you want to consider Aiden Carroll a midfielder right now for the Maryland Whipsnakes. But ultimately, when it comes to true midfielders that are on that list, it's McConvey at 5 and Ryan Drenner at 2, really, that are on that list of midfielders. So pretty awesome. He's definitely in contention, I think, for a chance at midfielder of the year. The thing, though, in the last couple of weeks, he's been getting a lot less touches. My personal opinion, watching him get touches taken away from him for Connor Kelly hurts me internally often because I just feel like I've watched Connor Kelly make a lot of weird mistakes this season in the PLL that I haven't seen Thomas McConvey make. And ultimately now they're going to add CJ Kirst, and I don't know if that means even less touches for McConvey. But my thought process would be now you've got 2 bigs on your lefty side to run a big pick and roll. You don't even need to work it with McCardle anymore. You can just work Kirst and McConvey on that wing. That team can be more scary than the 16 goals they put up against the Archers last weekend. But there's our Water Dogs conversation. And the last team we got to talk about here, the Denver Outlaws. Actually, the Atlas also, a crazy game against Boston. Connor Schellenberger is absolutely, I said it on my old podcast last year. I would have taken Connor Schellenberger 1-1 if I were the Denver Outlaws last year. Now, things worked out for them because they got Pat Cavanaugh in that spot instead, and now they do have a quarterback for that team, so it's not a problem. But last year when they were doing this draft, the Outlaws took Brennan, passed up on TJ Malone twice, and then took Josh Zawada late. And meanwhile, they could have just said, all right, we're going to fill the only hole that we have on our team, which is an ex-attackman, and taking Connor Schellenberger at 1. And not to say that Brennan O'Neill is not one of the best players in the PLL and is clearly a number 1 overall pick talent. Connor Schellenberger, though, is absolutely unbelievable and probably will go down as one of the most consistent players ever in the PLL. Like a down game for Shelley still has 3 points, whereas a down game for Jeff Teat is an assist on his stat sheet. He has just been a crazy, crazy attacking player for the Atlas throughout this season. And now other teams that have crazy attacking, of course, the Denver Outlaws. I mean, they really just, under Pat Cavanaugh as their quarterback, have figured it out. And when you have the leader in touches in the PLL is your ex-attackman in Pat Cav, he's got almost 30 more touches than the next player right now in the PLL. That just means the ball's running through your highest efficiency player, and you've got one of 4 Tourton winners. He can then sling it to 3. It's kind of a cheat code. It makes total sense, though. You look at that team on paper, they should be the best team in the league, and now they are. And we'll see if that kind of continues to roll on as we get into this next weekend. I mean, my takes on what the good games of last weekend were going to be was completely wrong. Saturday was a much better set of games than Friday wound up being, just based on how the blowouts kind of went. But as we look to this upcoming weekend, the 2 games I'm keying in on are the Friday late night and the Saturday afternoon. Friday late night, it'll be really interesting to see if this Archers offense can get it done against Blaze Reardon. This feels like a bad matchup for the Archers with the way that they've been playing as of late. They're going to need to flip a switch on the offensive end if they want to beat this team, or they're going to have to hope for a not too hot Blaze Reardon, which is not really a thing that often. It has happened a couple times this season. They could run into it, but unlikely when he's still averaging 16.5 saves per game. The other game that is going to be awesome to me this weekend, Boston at 3-3 taking on the 4-2 Denver Outlaws at 3:00 on Saturday. Now, I feel like every time I've hyped up this Boston team for a game, they've lost. But that still does not take away from the fact that I think they are kind of the standard right now in the league for any team to, they're the measuring stick for any team, I think, in the league. So I think it'll be really key to see how Denver matches up with this Boston squad. Potential of, I don't want to say it's a championship preview at all. I just think that through the regular season, Boston as an image to look at is the most consistent thing that we can see. The other factor of this, obviously, is Pat Cavanaugh going up against the team that drafted him, tried to play him at midfield, and then traded him. And now he's absolutely thriving with the Outlaws. So 9 p.m. Friday and 3 p.m. Saturday would definitely be my 2 big games to watch. But it's also one of those things, like the way the PLL season has gone this year, the Atlas versus the Redwoods should go one way, right? It should be like 95% of the money would be on the Atlas and 5% on the Redwoods. It would be totally on brand for the PLL for the Redwoods to dog walk the Atlas by like 6. Like it would. It just would make sense. That's just how the season has gone this year. But we'll ultimately just kind of have to wait for that one to shake out. So that first game is 6:30 on Friday, but on ESPN2, the Archers and Chaos game 9 p.m. on Friday, and then at 3 on ABC, will be that Boston versus Denver game. That's going to do it for us this week on Against the Boards. I hope you enjoyed, and keep your ears down and listening for anything with the Knighthawks. We'll try to keep you as up to date as we can as time goes on. Big thanks to my producer, Paul Russo. I've been Chamberlain Bauder, and you're listening to Against the Boards.